1, 2. Okay, everyone, we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. We're waiting for a couple of people to still arrive. So welcome, we're glad you're here, and just a couple of minutes, we'll be starting. Thank you.
Raz, 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 dwa, trzy. Jak? Jest ok? Dobra.
everybody. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Rasva, rasva. Dva, dva. Okay, good day, everybody, and welcome to WarsawJS Meetup number 116. Let me hear you. Are we having a good day? I can barely hear myself. Can you hear me? Okay. Are we having a good day? Well, it's about to get a lot better because we have a really special meetup for you today and some really incredible speakers, great information, and obviously, as always, a great atmosphere. We are streaming this event live, and so our online audience, good morning, evening, or afternoon to you, wherever you're viewing from. And, of course, we're in Warsaw at Paramount. Our sponsors today, and let's give a big hand to our sponsors. Let me hear you. CallStack, Campus AI, Monday.com, XFang, and Paramount. That's right. It's your energy that will keep this thing rolling, and I promise you will not be disappointed. Is anyone here for the first time? Welcome to the people who are here for the first time. That's quite a number of people here for the first time. How many people have been here, let's say, more than 5 times? Okay, it looks about even. Interesting. Nice to see you all. Nice to meet you all. My name is Barry Salone, and I am going to be the MC today. And WarsawJS is, as it says here, what we do is provide a safe space for those looking to improve their JavaScript skills. And so we're encouraging you to join a community that gives back. Since I've been involved with this community, that has been true. Literally, that's the thing that is keeping me here. It's not just taking all the information that you can get and then running with it. It's also sharing that information and basically feeding the community so that developers of the future have a chance to be prepared and gain some experience and knowledge from some of us who are more experienced and working at the top of their fields. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, and now we're blocking the laptop, so let me see if I can go. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it says here technically word for word because each of these words is important. WarsawJS is a local community of JavaScript professionals and enthusiasts. We meet each month on the second Wednesday to talk about our favorite programming language, which is, okay, you got that right. We focus on sharing experiences from different JS fields, from web browsers to servers, dev tools, mobile, smart TVs, microcontrollers, databases, video games, and more. We have 9 years plus experience. And that means that soon it's going to be a 10-year anniversary, and God, I hope I live long enough to still be here. I hope they don't fire me. We've done more than 190 events, and our mission is to support both professional and novice software developers within the IT community. We intend to accelerate the education process by sharing our knowledge and experience. Am I speaking too quickly? Okay. Although our community was established in Warsaw, we are now internationally renowned, and it's true because you know why. This is largely thanks to our global network of members and sponsors. WarsawJS is for everyone. We are proud to be able to provide a safe, friendly, and welcoming environment for all, regardless of these things here. Now, the reason I don't mention these things at the bottom, generally speaking, is because in our field, and I'm saying our field because I'm now been adopted or kidnapped by the community, we are interested in skills. We're not interested so much in people and personalities. It's nice that we're nice. It's nice that we're all beautiful. However, what we're really concerned and focused on are technical skills and information which will help to advance our particular line of work. So the idea of all these other things, they are generally not an issue here. And what we do is that let me finish reading. Okay. We are open to all levels of IT understanding. Members who are new to the industry will have unlimited access. Does this continue? We'll have unlimited access. I think you get the idea. I'm Barry Salone. Give me one more hand, please. It's really nice to be with you. Thank you. And also give a hand to our amazing team. We have Piotr Gentara. Where is he? He's over there. Sasha Michalowska. She's around here somewhere too. Louisa Haas, technical whiz, over there. And Maciek Makniewski, wherever you are, we love you. You know I do. All right. Yeah, give us a hand. Come on. Let's hear some energy in here. Come on. Right. Because what I've learned is the energy that you give also comes back. Oh, that's something. It's not philosophy, it's just true. Also, give a hand to our volunteers, Dvudbek, Mehdi, Ilian, Magdalena, Ula, and Chris. And by the way, if anyone thinks that they might be interested in volunteering, please speak to us, because this, although we make it look so easy, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So we can always use more help. And also it helps to grow the community. It looks like someone's switching something. I'm nervous. Okay. And by the way, also by volunteering, you can also reduce the cost, potentially, of attending these very informative meetings and meetups, and save some money and also gain some valuable information. So you might be able to get one or two of them for free. If you also want to win a prize today, we encourage you to submit or provide a lightning talk, 5-minute limit. If you have a theme that hasn't been presented today or maybe ever, a concept, a new application that you've developed, please feel free to present it in front of this very welcoming audience. They are eager to hear what you have to offer, because we're all innovators here, we're all creators. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So for that, you will win a 100%, what is it? JetBrains license. Okay, license for JetBrains, 100% free. You'll get it for simply giving a 5-minute lightning talk. I'm trying to control these things at once and trying to get this done as quickly as possible. It looks like that was double slides. Okay, once more, our sponsors, CallStack, let me hear you. Campus AI, KMag, XFang, Monday.com, and Paramount. I'm always happy to be here at Paramount because these guys back here, the technical guys in the studio, it's so wonderful, it's comfortable, they're so competent, they make me look good on camera. It's just a great place to be, and they've been very, very generous. You'll see that in the break, they also have some refreshments over here that they provided that you'll be able to access, some water, some chips, some coffee, so feel free to do that during the break. All right. And now, without any further ado, there was something else I needed to say. Oh, yes. We're also promoting the idea of buying a 1-year membership. Now, we talked about saving money by becoming a volunteer. I know it's not here. I know it's not. I just want to introduce the idea. Yes, we're going to make it possible and announce later how you can actually buy a 1-year membership for these meetups and save also a lot of money. I think it's probably a very, very good idea. So keep that in mind, and later on you'll find out more about that. All right. And if you have an idea for a talk, an original talk, a full talk, which is about 25 minutes, I think, 27? 25 exactly minutes, and we have a gong? Oh, we don't have it today. I'll try to make some noise if you go over time. You won't like it. So try to really make your talk concise and organize it well, and you won't have to worry about me harassing you from the sidelines. If you have a talk, an idea for a talk, please scan this. I don't see anyone's cameras up. Let me see your phones. And submit those ideas to WarsawJS. You'll send it to our website, and we will review it and have a discussion with you, and hopefully we will see you here on this stage sooner or later. One thing I forgot to mention, I knew there was something. We have an agreement here. We follow the Berlin Code of Conduct. Does anyone know what the Berlin Code of Conduct is? You do. Basically, it means that we all agree that there'll be no abusive language, no harassment, and everyone will treat each other with equal respect. Does that sound like a good idea? Let me see your hands. The cameras are watching. Let me see your hands. Okay, that's a great thing, because we've never really had an issue here with that, and I think that's one of the things that keeps me coming back. People are accepting, they're curious, and they're willing to listen and accept everyone. It's a great place to be, a great community, not group, and community means giving back. So if you can do that lightning talk or prepare a talk to offer us, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, and finally, with no further delay, let's go. Oh, we already did that. We went. All right. Our first, oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, because it says let's go. Oh, there we go. I got it this time. Are you ready? Our first speaker, the title of his talk is TypeScript Template Literal Types. Who need it anyway? Please welcome Michał Michalczuk. Michał Michalczuk. This is going to take some practice. You ready, Michał?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, have a good time.
Thank you. Let me switch the...
25 minutes.
Give me a second.
I'll give you a sign from over here.
Cool. Give me a second. Let me switch the laptops. Okay. I need some space here.
From the time that you start speaking, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. I need a clicker.
There you go.
You see the black screen. And now you should see, maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. You should see my screen actually now. No, it used to work a few minutes ago. Okay, one more time. Stop mirroring and mirror one more time. Okay.
So this is when we agree to be polite, right? This is the whole idea. Of course, take your time. There's no pressure. You're the first speaker. We have a little bit of extra leeway. Piotr will tell some jokes in the meantime.
Please do. Please do.
I don't know any jokes.
It will be very appreciated.
Try it. Yeah. So and Piotr, Gentara's son, also knows how to play the piano. So does Sasha. So in case you have to get over here and play something, I mean, we have plenty to do.
Właśnie, czekaj.
How many people are here for the first time again? Can I see your hands?
Mamy mirror.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
go?
Got it.
Right,
Yeah.
good.
Woo.
Thank you.
Woo. Okay, technical obstacles at its finest. But cool, let me start the timer. So, do you remember, like 4 years ago, so in like internet years, it's like 200 years at least, there was a TypeScript 4.1. And it was a minor release, but Microsoft, they love shipping huge stuff in the minor releases, like mind new TypeScript 5.5. And in that release, they've shipped the template literal types. And what is it? Right? By the book, they are types built on the string literal types, and they have the ability to expand into the many strings by unions. At least that's what the documentation says. And they have the very same syntax as the template literal strings in JavaScript, but they are used as types. At least that's what the official docs says. We'll dive a bit deeper than the official docs today. And if you recall, if you're that 200 years, internet years old, and you recall the introduction, they put this ordinary hello world in the first announcement, which says like nothing. But the very next day, maybe even the same day, someone published, I think it was Tomek Sługowski, he published that example, how you can type the Tailwind classes. If you're using Tailwind, I am, someone? Great. I guess that you know this combination of color and the variant. So, actually, why not type it, right? We know that there is some set of colors, like in my case, gray, red, yellow, green, some set of variants. So, the whole set of possibilities is combination of all the colors and all the variants. So, let's just write a type in the very same syntax as string literal types, with the dollar signs and so on. And voila, here we have it. The union type, which is combination of all of the possibilities from those two types, those two unions. And now this very string, it's not a magic string anymore. It's a fully typed and type-safe value, right? Which has to fit this union. Okay, so that was the very base example, but how we can actually use it? Imagine you're creating the design system, and you have the same base colors and variants, and you're making some button. Okay. It has some probes. It has the color, which is the same combination as we saw. It has the background color, same combination as we saw, so fixed types are only available there. There is some spacing, some framing, which is also some set, or at least it requires some suffix like pixel or one of the other popular units, which you might recall. Hello. And let's use it in our fancy design system. Nothing interesting here. The usage is more interesting. That both, they have just magic strings, or at least that's how they would behave in JavaScript, for example, or with TypeScript, but without the template literal types that we've used. And the very first example, it just won't compile. the very blue please, no matter how much we will please, it won't work. But the green 400, as it will. So, a pretty few interesting examples were created just after the release. Pretty odd ones, like the Eliza bot. It's a conversation bot from the 60s, Eliza, where you can just put here a message to the Eliza and get some response fully on the type level. Tell me a joke. Tell me a joke. Yeah. Not quite works, but if you take a look at the implementation here, it does a bunch of ifs underneath, right? Just a bunch of ifs, a lot of infers, and tons of the template literal types. Really great example, but not very useful. Yet another great, but not very useful. Back in the days, it was 100 internet years ago, because it was 2 years ago. Orta from the TypeScript team, he recreated the Wordle, the popular word game back in the days, on the type level. Also nice, but not very usable. And the famous TS SQL is my absolutely favorite example made purely for fun, where you can have the SQL engine purely on type level. Why? Because you can. This is the only reasoning. And yeah, it really works. Yeah, I won't play with that because I don't have time. But if you're interested, in the end of my presentation, I have the QR code with the whole slides and the links, including all of those examples. They are linked here on the slides. So yeah, nice one, but also not very useful. But we had some useful examples which were like done not that far away after the initial presentation of this feature, like from Hasura, which solved the problem of magic strings. If you ever use Hasura, they are supporting multiple database engines. And for each engine, there is a different set of features or commands which can be used. And before that, you have to just know which are available. But after the template literal types drop in and they've used it, they could actually type save all of those strings more in their block. Or something else very useful, which is Kisly, the SQL query builder, which is also not using just the magic strings, but actually a fully typed strings based on some schema which you have to define upfront. Works as well like a charm. And the really cool feature, which is still experimental in Next.js, which are statically typed links. So if you try to put href into link, which is not in your file hierarchy and which won't resolve in the page, it just won't compile. We'll get back to it later. And this is me. My name is Michał Michalczuk. I live in Gdańsk, but I'm working for Tech Consulting, a small Berlin-based consulting agency. I'm also a talking head at Just Join It. I'm doing various video and audio formats with them from time to time. But let's get back to the template literal types, where we can use them in our applications, how we can leverage it. At the end of the day, they are just types which should help us. So imagine this case. You're creating some app which includes setting up a server, setting up a service. It has the name, it has the address in IP version 4. So we know the format of IP version 4. Those will be 4 numbers, okay, 8 bits numbers, but for simplicity, those 4 numbers separated by the dot, right? We can type it with a template literal type. And now it will force us to put a correct value here, right? So if you're making the configuration in the code, it will guard you to not put any gibberish there. If we would like to expand our config with any option by the convention, so yada anything option, let's create some map type which will force to use the option suffix, and the value have to be Boolean. So that one will just work dynamically, right? And if something doesn't have the option, it just won't compile, right? All thanks to this. So making things by the convention is, in my opinion, one of the good usages for the template literal types. Okay. Anything else? I guess that you know the discriminated union types. So the pattern where you have the one field which is unique per type. Like here, I have a success and a failure, and they both have the unique field called type, which is the discriminator. So to dispatch them, right? To dispatch them, I can just put switch here or bunch of ifs, and with the template literal types put as here, anything which ends with the success will be treated as a success, and anything with the XX error will be treated as an error. So yet another cool thing, how you can make your code base more flexible, especially if you have something which is older. And let's take a look at it from a bit different side and have something which is a kind of dynamic in return. So imagine that you're creating this this type, and let's use the template literal type as a result type, right? So it will result in anything with a success in the end. But let's make it more robust and fix it to the HTTP success or process success. It's still pretty like limited, and you have to put a lot of manual effort to expand it. But with the TypeScript 5.0 const type parameters, you can do really cool things, in my opinion, like that. That if I'll put here a param, which will be of a type T, the generic type, and then I will say that, hey, this is actually a const, it will fix me the result type to just IO success, right? So it will narrow down pretty dynamically to this generic type. Really nice one. And why actually to use it? To reflect the reality, because existing types, they can be pretty messy. So fight with the mess. And what about the mapped types? We saw one example, but in general, here comes the fun part. Did you miss Angular? Who's using Angular? Anyone? Okay, don't be shy. I used to work with Angular a lot. I really like it. I kind of miss it. But imagine that you're creating the system. You have the users, as we all do. I hope so. And the user has the name, surname, and the age. And you would like to create the handlers for those. So for all of the fields, we should have the output, so the event emitter field with the suffix changed. Cool. Let's use map types and create field per each field, yeah, in the given type, plus the changed suffix with that. And right, and we got it. And now we will be forced to implement both of the inputs and the outputs. So one more time, making things force the things by the convention. It's a good usage for the template literal types here. Okay, now let's do the opposite. Imagine you have the existing code base and you would like to take only those handlers. Can you do it? I'm not interested in the name, surname, and age, but all of those changed stuff. I can, why not? There is a built-in helper, pick. So let me just pick from the user anything which matches this predicate of any string and then changed. And is, by the way, a key of user. And yep, why? One more time, why do we need it? If you're surfing over the legacy code base and you just don't want to repeat the types and type it over and over again, good way to reuse it. And this is something which I'm actually using in my project, so it's not just a dummy TSQL example. Okay, let's dive more into the topic. If you ever had a chance to work with any finance project or maybe something which includes the medical data, I had this chance. You have to store any freaking change. If you're changing the visit, you're storing the change. If you're changing the patient data, doctor data, the invoice, bill, literally anything, you have to store it. So in your system, you probably have a lot of change log or change log tables, history tables, and so on. So for the patient, we will have the all of the fields with old and new values. For example, that's just one way to do it. And okay, let's just write it once and forget, but then it spawns over your system. Like actually, every freaking table needs its sibling with the change log. So we're lazy. Let's use our superpower, the laziness. And let's write down the helper for that. So we have the patient entity, name, birth date, sex, and our helper, the changelog, which will have some fixed sets of its own fields, plus for each given field from the given type, from the t-type, we will create not one, but actually pair of fields, so with old and new prefix. Why? Because here I just put the union, so it will have to create like actually both. And don't trust me, trust the code. It will just generate the type for me, right? So effortless. I can just do it with the small little type helper. Okay, so some time was saved. But what else we can do with those template literal types feature? We saw how to generate it, but now how to, I would call, unpack it. At some point, I was working at Atlassian in ecosystem organization, and we were using the ARI, which is the Atlassian Resource Identifier. If you're using AWS, there is something like ARN, Amazon Resource Name, something like that. Similar idea. This is the hierarchical identifier. And as you see, it has the ARI, then there is a cloud or server, then there is a resource owner, cloud ID, resource type, yada, yada, yada. It's a hierarchy. And you can read any part of this hierarchy depending on the part of the system that you're currently working on. If you're only interested in who's the owner, you're just picking that owner part from the string. So there is a pattern. And let's type this pattern in types, right? Resource, owner, environment, they are fixed sets of possibilities. If I'll create a template literal type for that, right? I can just write this pattern as a plain type. And it will be, of course, combination of all of those possibilities, and it will just type guard with me playing with those strings. Does it make sense? Yes, if you're making your configuration from the code level. Of course, it will just guard you. And so we can create it, but imagine that we would like to unpack it. Why? Because it might not be your type, it can be part of some external, package, some dependency, it's just not yours, but you would like to use only the environment or only the owner part. Hey, we have the infer, let's play with it. We know that on the first position after the ARI column, there is an environment, so I can unpack it, right? And I will know that it is cloud or server, so I can now use it in my own code. come on, I need the owner. Yeah, sure. I know the owner is on the second position. Let me just infer that part, and I will know that this is the owner, and so on, and so on. Don't trust me, trust the code, right? I can do it as well. I can also go wild and unpack all, just put as many infers as possible here and have the more object style here, which can be also pretty helpful if you're making some code configuration convention. Why not, right? So I would call it unpacking. And one more time, why do we actually need it? Because it might not be our code base, but something which we would like to reuse from someone else's code and use it in our components and so on. Okay, and remember one thing, TypeScript is not a new language anymore. It's like 11 years old. In this year, it will be 12. I'm using it since 2013, and I saw a lot of stuff, a lot of evolutions here. And there are a lot of legacy patterns existing. Like that one, imagine that someone 100 internet years ago created those two types, success and failure. And now we would like to know what the heck happened and where the failure occurred. Was it the HTTP failure? Was it the pipe, process, file? Yeah. So let me unpack it one more time. So those are the two types that you just saw. Let me create some small union. And now, with the magic of infer, it's not magic, by the way, just with the infer, let me just take all of the fields named type, which extends something, which we will infer, and then success or error. And we got it, right? We don't have to type it again. We can just reuse the type. We can actually parse it from the previously existing type. So pretty cool one. Okay, have you missed Express? I don't, but probably you recognize that one, that Express have those path params. So yeah, of course that you can unpack it, right? Why not with the same patterns? You can do some recursion inside. Don't do this at home. And if you would like to complicate your life even more, there is a library for that, which is called HotScript, which means higher order TypeScript, because why not? Don't do this at home, but you can actually unpack it even more with adding the types and so on. Crazy things. But I'm running out of time, and I guess that you're curious how then Next.js statically typed links works. So I've created a small app. This is those are the folders in my application, some posts and some comments. I've turned on the typed roots experimental flag. Sorry. And this is the result. If I'm linking to a resource which matches those files, those pages, it works perfectly. But if I'm trying to link to users or posts which doesn't match the path, it will just break. And I was wondering how it happens underneath. Like, they cannot read the files and link it with the compiler and with the language service. It wouldn't make any sense. And I was right. It wouldn't make any sense. On the build or during the dev build, they are just generating the files with the types. And by reading the directories and files, and by the convention, of course, they are just creating all of those roots as a types, and then the href is just type of route implementation. So pretty clever, I would say. This is a really good one. So TypeScript, yeah, you can think about it like a big autocomplete plugin. Yes, and you will be very right about that. But of course, there is a limit to everything. And let's revisit this configuration example. And actually, now let's force user that, hey, here we can have only 8 bits, some number from 0 to 255 on each position. Will it work? OK. How I did it, this is the small type helper. It has the recursion inside. So actually, it hits the limit. Because it exceeds the 100,000 combinations, which is the limit for TypeScript. And the calculations, in general, they are very, very CPU consuming. So there is a limit. And I have 2 minutes? OK, I will do it. And in general, TypeScript team, they recommend that people use ahead of time generation for the large string unions, like that one. But for smaller cases, just use it. Just use template literal types. This is really cool feature which will help you. And when overused, they will just give your IDE hard time because they will just be complex, use the CPU, especially by combined with recursion, as my example. Also, they will give you, future you, and other maintainers a lot of pain, probably, if they will try to understand what the heck happened there. Small appendix, if you would like to check the performance of the compiler, you can. I have the slide on my presentation, so sorry. And in general, this is really a wrap-up. So use TypeScript-rich types toolset. Don't make your types look like a Git conflict, please. Then, if they do, please do a step back. And type them all, but please be rational and remember that other humans will have to read it, including future you. And thank you very much. And here you'll find the presentation.
That was pretty well done.
Repository.
That was pretty well done. You can keep speaking, but that was excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Michał Michalczuk? This is important about this talk. For myself, I had difficulty understanding because you were speaking quickly, and also you have a very unique accent, I must say. By the way, if you're going to ask questions, try to be as clear as possible for our audience who is watching online. So this is being live streamed, just to remind you. So please, any questions for Michał? Going once. Oh, see, I'm blind on the right side, excuse me.
No problem. Hey, thanks for the presentation. My question is, what about the readability? If you have a union of very many types, TypeScript says, and etc. more. Is there a usable way to see all the combinations if one wants to? You showed an example where there was literally all the variants combined, and you showed how to extract things from that. But I wonder if we prepare a type that is fairly complex, someone may have problems reading it and imagining what are the combinations. Is there a tool to help in such a case? Thank you.
I'm not 100% sure. For sure, there is a compiler flag which will show you the whole error content because the errors are also trimmed. There is a Visual Studio Code extension from Matt Pocock called blah, 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 something TypeScript. You'll find it. Blah, blah, blah. Yada TypeScript. I guess that you'll find it, which also helps with the errors. But I'm not sure will it show all of the possible unions.
You don't have a case that you can really recite where that's happened with you, yes? So
no.
I think it's a very, very clever question.
If I'm going to that level, it means that it's too far.
It's too
yeah,
far.
Exactly.
You said it can get complicated if overused. I did remind, and I like the part where you said at the beginning, it instructs you not to insert any gibberish. I really like that part. Any other questions, anyone? How many types are there, by the way?
Up to 100,000.
Yeah, that can get messy, I can see, for sure. Oh, here we go.
Hi, so why to bother and not use any everywhere?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Why not just use JavaScript? Like, with any, you're just on the JavaScript level of typing.
Just.
Yeah, it just won't help you with anything.
But I can add TypeScript in your resume.
Yeah, you can add TypeScript in your CV. Agree, but we can go further with that out of this talk.
So there are definitely additional benefits.
Only benefits.
That make it worth it. It's either time efficient or cost efficient, or there's some ways that it organizes your work more quickly, more rapidly, more effectively.
In general, there is always a human, which is the biggest costs in the end, and we will just put the cost to the human, which will have to understand it and track it and put the whole mental model inside of their head. And with the TypeScript and types, the mental model is in the types, not in the another person's head.
Got it. I think I got that. No more questions, anyone? Yeah, we have one more right there.
Maybe some additional question about these fun projects that use TypeScript as they shouldn't, like DB. I heard that first time from you, so that I'm interested if maybe there are some other fun projects like that you know of.
I don't recall the most odd ones I put in here in this presentation. By the way, there is one odd project which gives you opportunity to use regex in the types, but it is very far from being performant, so don't use it. Don't even Google it. But there is
Just
a
forget he
project like
mentioned that.
that.
He didn't even say that. Everyone, please give Michał Michalczuk a big hand. Thank you. I like the innovation. I like the idea that people are looking for tools that really make sense, that can help you to organize yourself, your team, your work more effectively, more efficiently. And at the same time, you know, there's one thing about, like, for instance, I'm going to use it one time, the AI assistance, that a little bit disturbs me. I think it's important to work together. It's important for us to keep our faculties, let's say, intact, that we are able to rely on partners and communicate as human beings. And yes, there are certain tasks, of course, you want to definitely designate to some of these tools. And TypeScript, I hear, is very popular. People are using it. And so it must be good for something. That's for sure. How are you, sir? And now our next speaker is, I just hope I get your name right. This is Andrii Romasiun?
Yes.
Ha-ha! Andrii Romasiun. And the title of his talk is very simple, and as soon as I looked away from the screen, I forgot it because he's got my clicker. Let me just say it. The title is Writing Secure JavaScript. Very simple title. It sounds like it's going to be very good. Please welcome Andrii to the platform.
Hello. Hello. So my name is Andrii Romasiun, and I am a full-stack JavaScript engineer at Strasbourg, and at the same time, I'm also an open source contributor. I love open source. I founded my Google Analytics alternative, which is also open source. And I love JavaScript, TypeScript, programming, and everything that is related to this field. So, writing secure JavaScript. JavaScript is basically the reason we all gathered here. It's the most widespread programming language in the world. It has millions of libraries and frameworks and code written in it. And at the same time, it is important to be able to write JavaScript securely, because 30,000 of websites are hacked daily, and most of these hacks could be easily prevented with the right knowledge and skills. So today I'd like to start with cross-site scripting vulnerability, which is probably the most common vulnerability there is. And in fact, it's the most reported vulnerability on sites like HackerOne. And basically, cross-site scripting allows an attacker to execute custom JavaScript code on users' browsers. And by successfully exploiting this kind of vulnerability, they can steal cookies, they can steal login information, or set up mining on their browsers, or do lots of other nasty things. There are three kinds of XSS. There is stored XSS, reflected XSS, and DOM-based XSS. Stored XSS is when a user sends a malicious JS, like in a chat application. This JavaScript is stored in the database and is later shared with other people from the database. Reflected XSS is when a hacker stores a malicious JavaScript as a query parameter in the URL and shares this link with other people. And DOM-based XSS is probably the most dangerous kind of XSS there is, because a malicious JavaScript is stored as a URI fragment, and it is impossible to detect such XSS server-side, because the URI fragment are never sent to the server. They always stay on the client side. And as an example of stored XSS, hacker could write some malicious JavaScript in a chat application, which would later be executed on all of the participants of such imaginary chat. A real-life case of XSS would probably be Google Search. Google Search is known to handle millions of requests, maybe per minute. And in fact, it was vulnerable to this vulnerability in 2019. A hacker could craft a JavaScript, put it in the Google search, and later share this search link with other people. And anyone who would follow this URL would get some custom JS executed on their browser. So they could steal Google authentication cookies or basically do anything else. For each of the real-life cases you will see further in this presentation, I put a QR code. If you want to know a bit more details, you can scan it, and it will lead you to websites with more details. So to prevent XSS, you should always sanitize user content. If you have a chat application, you accept user content in it, you should treat all the HTML characters like lower than, greater than, and so on, and replace them with a Unicode representation like that. You should also implement strict content security policy, which would prevent any kind of JavaScript being executed except the JavaScript you specify in it. So for example, you can set this content security policy to only execute JavaScript that is sent from JSDeliver website, JSDeliver CDN. And you should always treat user's input as text, not HTML. You should use JavaScript text content property instead of inner HTML whenever possible. And yep. Coming up to the next vulnerability, mass assignment. Nowadays, many frameworks automatically take the HTTP request and map it for you as a variable. So you can access these request parameters later on. This is convenient, but at the same time, it brings a few vulnerabilities, like the mass assignment, and which could be exploited by an attacker. So, for example, you can access, for this post request, you can access all of the parameters as a body object, and you could pass this body object in your database to apply it. This code would work perfectly. It's supposed to update username for a user and it will update it. But assuming that your application uses some kind of other variable like isadmin to differentiate between regular users and admins, an attacker could pass this property inside the request, and it would get applied, and it would grant them administrative privilege. So this is pretty nasty vulnerability. A real-life case of this would probably be Uber, which in 2016 had this vulnerability as well. It had a form which allowed drivers to update their profile picture, and a hacker could pass first name, last name inside this form, and it would get applied to their account without any verification from the Uber side. So if you don't want to share a cab with an unverified Uber driver, you should know how to prevent this vulnerability. To prevent this, you as a developer, it's your responsibility to always enumerate exactly what values should be applied from the request object to your database. So this code will also work perfectly, but now we specify that we only want to update username from the object, from the HTTP request, and discard everything else. The next vulnerability is called path traversal. It's also known as directory traversal. And most of the web servers have some kind of public or assets folder where they store some style sheets or JavaScript or images that are supposed to be accessible by users. But if you do not set up your server correctly, an attacker could access some arbitrary files outside of this public folder from your server. For example, here is an endpoint that allows users of this API to load some files from your designated public folder. But it works well, but if an attacker passes a path like this, it would return a file from that path. So they would be able to escape from the public folder and read any file from your server. So the real-life case of this vulnerability would be an Algolia messaging service where an attacker was able to make a GET request to a static path. It was a CDN which shared some style sheets, JavaScript, and so on. And if an attacker made a request like this, they would be able to read any file, any arbitrary file from the Algolia's server. To prevent this vulnerability, you should always use a content management system or a CDN whenever possible. It's such things like file management or file sharing are supposed to be managed not by you, but by a special software like a CMS. But if you absolutely need to store files on your server, each time file is uploaded, you can assign a unique name to it, and each time this file is requested, you can go to your database, find the path which represents this unique file name, and return it. And this way, you would prevent any path traversal vulnerability on your site and make so-called whitelist of files that are allowed to be read from your server. But if you absolutely have to work with path that users provide to your API, you should use principle of least privilege, which is basically when you create a new user on your server that only has access to this specific public or assets folder. And if there is a path traversal on your site and someone tries to read files outside of this folder, they would not be able to, because the user that runs your server only has access to this specific assets folder. And in the code, we saw earlier, it is possible to prevent the path traversal simply by resolving the path first, making sure that it's not outside of our designated folder. And if it is not, we can read the file and return it to the user. The next vulnerability is called CSRF, cross-site request forgery. It is basically a type of attack that allows a hacker to make some actions on your website on behalf of your users. So, for example, they could create a fake website, they could insert some kind of form in it and trick your users to changing a password, for example, or doing some other actions. And from their website, they would make a request to your website, but modifying some values in this form. So, for example, here is a transfer endpoint that allows people to make banking transfers from one account to another. It is vulnerable to CSRF because it does not make sure that a request to transfer money is coming from your server. So an attacker would be able to create a request to your endpoint from their website, from their HTML form on your user's behalf, but the two account would be set to their banking account. A real-life case of this vulnerability would probably be a Glassdoor website, which had this vulnerability in 2020. It allowed an attacker to make a request to any endpoint of their website. So an attacker would be able to leave a review on some company's page, submit a salary, maybe update some account details, all on behalf of their users by tricking them into doing some actions on his site. To prevent this vulnerability, you should always make sure that all GET requests to your site are side effect free, which is basically they only return information and do not change anything on your site. Because GET requests are one of the most common ways of how CSRF is executed. You should also set up some anti-CSRF tokens on all of your crucial forms. So CSRF token is basically a unique token that is generated by your server for each request and injected in the forms when it is generated server-side as a hidden input field. And you should also make sure that all of the cookies, all of the critical cookies on your site have strict or lax same-site attribute, and it would prevent them from being shared in cross-site requests. They would only be available on the original domain of your website. So the next vulnerability is probably the most dangerous one. It's called remote code execution. There are two kinds of languages. There are languages that are compiled like into binary code like C++ or C. And there are languages that are interpreted line by line by an interpreter. And JavaScript is such a programming language. And most of such languages allow some code to be written as a string and assigned to a variable and executed later on. And it's possible to do with the eval function in JavaScript. And applications that deal with user input are particularly vulnerable to RCE. So for example, if you have, let's take a Google Spreadsheets app. It has a functions input in it, and it allows users to craft some functions that are executed on the Excel table. If their app would be vulnerable to this vulnerability, an attacker could pass some JavaScript function in it, and it would be executed on the server. So if the user input is not validated, is not sanitized, is not executed in a sandboxed environment, it could result in bad consequences. So the first example of remote code execution is eval. If you use eval function on your server, you should be really cautious because it is probably one of the most common ways on how this vulnerability comes up. The second example is probably is possible by exploiting object and function constructors. So it is more an imaginary example, but it's still possible if your application calls up object with parameters like A, A, B that are controllable by a user, they can execute code like that. And the most realistic example is this. So here we have an endpoint that is supposed to return Git history for a file that is provided by the user. It works, but it is vulnerable if a user, instead of file name, passes some shell command. It will get executed by the JavaScript process, and your application would be hacked. To prevent remote code execution, you should always treat user's input as untrusted. You should always validate it. You should always sanitize it, and you should never execute it on your server. And if you have to execute user's input as a shell command, you should do it in a sandboxed environment which does not have access to your to the files on your server. So in case there is NRC, it would not be that bad. Open redirects. Open redirects is a super convenient feature in modern user experience. So for example, there is a website and user tries to access some page that is supposed to be available to only authorized users. It is a good practice to redirect them to the login page, take the URL, store it as a query parameter, and after they log in, it's good to redirect them back to the original destination. This can be exploited by an attacker if you do not do these redirects properly. So for example, this endpoint takes username, password, and the next variable that contains the link they should be redirected to. And after the successful authorization, they redirect to whatever is located on that variable. And an attacker could craft a link like and set the next variable to their malicious website. They could send this link by email to some user, and they would open it, they would authorize and get redirected to a phishing website created by an attacker, which would be able to steal their credentials, for example, later on. An example of open redirects would probably be the SEMrush, which had this vulnerability, and it allowed people to redirect. It will allow the attackers to redirect to any website even without the need for them to do any actions, like login or sign up. And to prevent this vulnerability, you should always make sure that that the URL you're redirecting people to are relative to your website and not absolute. And in our previous code, you can do this by making a regular expression like that, which checks that the URL starts with a slash. If it does, then we can redirect them. The next vulnerability is regular expression denial of service. Regular expressions are super useful to validate texts, to validate emails, password, check their length, and they are pretty fast, even on large chunks of texts. However, some regular expressions could be crafted in such a way that they would check same text over and over and over again exponentially, and as a result crash your server. A real-life case of such vulnerability would be Cloudflare. They had a web application firewall which checks all of the links in case they have an XSS or SQL injection in it, and they did it by applying regular expressions. And their regular expression had a catastrophic backtracking problem in it, which checked same URL over and over and over and over again, and as a result, it crashed the whole data center. To prevent this, you should never, ever take regular expressions from user and execute them on your server. If you must use user input as a regular expression, you should do some static checks on it, like safe regex package, which checks that the regex are safe to execute. And you could also use other custom regular expression engines that guarantee linear execution of regular expressions. The next vulnerability is host header injections. They, for example, if you have nowadays, most of the servers, they have no idea what domain they're hosted on. They only know the IP address. If you have an API that sends transactional emails and you take the domain information by using host or origin header, it is probably vulnerable to host header injections. If an attacker supplies host with their custom domain and you inject this into your transactional email, it will get vulnerable and they would be able to send emails to your users with their website on your behalf. The real-life case of this is the US Department of Defense website that treated host header as a website they should render, and it allowed hacker to serve any content on their site on their behalf. To prevent this, you should always use relative links instead of absolute. Like in HTML templates, you should load CSS or JS relatively to your domain and not past absolute links. It would prevent most cases of host header injections or even web cache poisoning. You should also not rely on host or origin headers, but instead store this information in a .env configuration file and using it later if needed. And last but not least, vulnerable or toxic dependencies. Nowadays, most developers do not write all of the stuff from scratch, but instead they rely on some third-party libraries like IP validation things or literally anything. It is good business decision because it allows people to focus on their core product instead of reinventing the wheel over and over. However, sometimes it might be a bad practice, like a SolarWinds attack that allowed hackers to inject some malicious code in their software that would later be distributed to thousands of customers. And as a result, hundreds of organizations, Microsoft, Intel, US Treasury website, they got hacked. And another example might be Faker.js library, where an author behind this library deliberately created a new release that was broken, and it crashed dozens of applications and GitHub workflows because of that. So to prevent this, you should use things like GitHub Dependabot, which analyzes your application's dependency tree and alerts you if something is vulnerable, if something is wrong. You should rely on popular software whenever possible because popular libraries usually have dozens of eyes behind them, and if something is wrong, they tend to be fixed pretty quickly. And you should use package log JSON file in your projects to pin your dependency tree to a specific version, the specific known good version, in case the latest one is vulnerable, so you would prevent it. Thank you for your attention, and looking for your questions.
That was amazing. Give him a big hand.
Thank you.
Andrii, I just have something to say. What's interesting for me is that you're doing a couple of things very well.
Thank you.
You're very, very well. You're explaining a lot of cases in which this can occur. So you're teaching these people how to hack and how to beat the hacker. At the same time. I think it's fascinating. It was really valuable information because security right now has become even more important than ever. Anyone have any questions for Andrii?
Okay, so I have a question. I wonder, what sort of sources would you recommend for a programmer for starters? Because we've got of us top 10, we've got of us cheat series, and so on, but what may be the easiest way to start implementing like cybersecurity knowledge into your coding? Is it or something different?
So do you mean like learning how to, okay. OWASP is actually good, but a bit complicated site. Personally, I would recommend you a site called Hacksplaining. It covers most of the popular and unpopular vulnerabilities and like highlighted in code, so you'd be able to prevent it. But other than that, I don't know. I collected this information bit by bit. Cannot share anything else.
You've already provided so many titles, so many. And by the way, if of course you missed anything, please make sure you go and check our channel, WarsawJS channel. You can watch it, you know, and take in more details and remember what he said. There was a lot of information there, sir. Any other questions? Next question. Come on, I know you have one. Ah, there it is.
Hey, do you know, could you give maybe some general tips for keeping the applications safe? For example, utilizing the browser itself, like the CSPs, like Content Security Policy. It already gives a huge lead because it's not much work to set them up. What would you also recommend to cover most of the vulnerabilities?
Yep, as you said, CSP, it is important. It's super boring to set it up, but it is important. And I would probably recommend to always treat users' input on all of your API endpoints as untrusted, because that is how most of these vulnerabilities come up. Yep, always treat user input as untrusted, validate it, sanitize it. Yep.
How many have been hacked? Has anyone had a hacking experience with one of your? Honestly, come on, let's see. Only two people ever have experienced that. Okay, that's very interesting. With your work, with something that you were developing or building, yes? Two people out of all of you. So apparently we don't need your advice. That's a very good point. Thank you, Lena, for that. Any other questions? This is the perfect time to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one. Because, for example, this path traversal issue is the thing that you have to go into many places and check it against like many paths. So my question is there any like programs that can help you to check your security on your application?
There are programs like Burpsuite, or there is a site called Portswigger, as if I'm not mistaken, they provide software like that automatically checks against common and some of the uncommon vulnerabilities. Personally, I used and sometimes still use Burp Suite. It is great. It's community. It has a large community behind it. It's easy to get started with. Yep.
Wow. Is this your specialty? Is this your field? Is this what you do?
It's more of a hobby, not a full-time.
Oh no, it's a lot of knowledge. I'm just really impressed by the number of solutions you found. I just think it's really pretty incredible. We have time for one more question before we go for a break in for pizza. You have another one, Lena? Okay, go for it. Go for it, sure.
Okay, you said burp. Why not zap?
Sorry?
You said burp is good. Why not zap?
Because I personally have not worked with it. I worked with Burp Suite. I recommend it personally. Yep.
So he didn't say not. He just gave a recommendation, right?
Yeah.
If I recommend this, it doesn't mean not that.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Good point. Oh, we have one more. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Lena.
So maybe one last piece of advice. I think the two questions were where to start being secure. I guess you could easily start with static checking, static analysis of your code, which means slint.
Yep.
And if you're more inventive, you can use things like, what's the name? SonarQube, which I don't believe is free. But if you're doing something big, then you should definitely convince your employer to invest in that.
Yep.
Is this a case where the question was the answer? Thank you so much.
It is.
Thank you so much. If you want to speak with Andrii later, of course, hopefully you'll be available for questions out there when we go for a break. So it looks like this, just before we leave. Andrii, give him another hand, please. This is really good. Fantastic. So it reminds me of a story. I can tell this story because this friend is no longer with us. So he was a master criminal when we were in high school. And later on, he went on to, in fact, be security for the U.S. government and for law enforcement. And the reason that he knew and was able to find the hackers and find the criminals and find the holes in the system was because he had exploited them himself. So I'm saying it's good to have information about how this is being done so that you know that it has been done and also how to protect yourselves. We have now a 30-minute break. Is that right? 35? 30-minute break. We're going to have stretch our legs and, and have some beer and pizza, and we'll see you back here in 30 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Mówię coś.
Hello, hello. 5 minutes, let's go, folks. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 4 minut. Proszę, zapraszamy. Three minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, folks, we're back. We're back. Hello. Woohoo! All right, there. Good, good, good. All right, folks. So I'm glad that you guys are back. You can already see. Are we back online, Louisa? Okay. You can already see the name of our next talk. I'm going to need folks to come and take their seats, please, because we're ready to start. Thank you. For our audience online, it's important also for you folks who are in the room to know and remember that all of these talks that we've been doing from the meetups for the past several years are available for review on our WarsawJS YouTube channel. You can go back and really study episode after episode after chapter, and much of that information is still useful and current. So that's another benefit. I just thought I'd announce that because that talk about security, there were so many names and so many apps and so many things mentioned that it would be impossible if you're not taking notes, for instance, and I saw that some people were. If you're not taking notes, it might be difficult to remember all of the suggestions and solutions and that were recommended. So thank you very much. Are you saying that I'm long-winded or what is it? All right, folks, so you can always see the name of our next topic is identifying and overcoming over-engineering, which I think is interesting. Let me start again. Simplicity in the spectrum. That's a lovely logo. It looks really nice. Identifying and overcoming over-engineering. Is that like overfitting? Is that what that is? Anybody know what overfitting is? Can someone tell me what overfitting is? Yes, I wanted to, I made sure that when my model had been finally tuned, that I stopped at a certain point to prevent overfitting because I would receive only a diminishing return if in fact the model was overtrained. Well, I don't do sentences. I'm doing statements rather than sentences. It's difficult for me to do a sentence. Without any further delay, please welcome. We had to talk. Przemysław, oh boy, Konefał.
All right, can you hear me? Yes. Hello. So yeah, simplicity in the spectrum, identifying and overcoming over-engineering. And this is a good starting question. What is over-engineering? And put simply, it's solving a problem that you don't have. Nobody sane would ever do this intentionally, but we can break it down to how this happens in two ways. So one way is that we have a problem and we apply solution that doesn't fit really well to the problem that we're trying to address. But the other one, and probably way more common one reason for why this happens, is that we apply the right solution, but unfortunately to the wrong problem, because determining what is your problem is a very difficult and usually open-ended thing to do. So this is a spectrum. A spectrum where on the one side, on the one end, there is under-engineering, so your solution ends up being too simple, so it fails to harness the complexity of the actual system that you're trying to build. And on the other side, there is over-engineering, so your solution is too bloated. It's filled with unnecessary features or have some unnecessary extra complexity. Now imagine that every architectural decision that you're making, every piece of code that you're writing can be put somewhere in that spectrum. So starting from the left side, we have a very naive approach to building a function that checks if a number is even. It goes just number by number. Of course, it's a very exaggerated example, but just to show you the point of under-engineering. And developers are usually very sensitive to issues on this left side of the spectrum. Pretty much every book ever written on software development somehow tries to identify and overcome issues coming from exactly this part. Now, on the other end, we have a function that does way too much. It has some excessive error handling. It has some layers of abstractions that make it the readability absolutely obscure, and so on and so forth. But we will enumerate many reasons, many aspects of it later. And then there is the balance, the sweet spot that we're always looking for. And what I believe, what it means to be a mature developer is to consistently hit this sweet spot. So we're yeah, exactly that. So agenda for today. Right, we're going to, as mentioned, we're going to focus on over-engineering, so covering the issues from the right side of the spectrum. And the goal of this presentation is to build, to help you build a little bit of awareness regarding the problems from this side, and hopefully improve your judgment in this. So to put some structure into this, we're going through reasons. So what are the underlying mechanisms that drive us to overshoot our decisions? Then we're going through symptoms. So what are the observable points that we can find to that can indicate that we are over engineering stuff? And at the end there are strategies and solutions on how to prevent it and how to overcome it. So let's go. Reasons, and one thing about reasons, sorry, maybe one more thing to mention here, that we are, sorry. Maybe I'll. It's not that important. I get to this one later because I'm. Yeah, reasons. So many of these reasons will overlap at least a little bit with things that drive us to also under-engineer things. So take it with a little bit of grain of salt. So number one, misaligned incentives of business and tech. Why would a company hire a software developer? Probably for many reasons, but usually the most important one is that it believes that the developer can positively contribute to reaching objectives of the business. But the tech part is quite complicated usually, so we have to also take care of some of internal objectives. We need to take care of them. Because otherwise this won't be maintainable. But what we sometimes either fail to understand or accept is that the tech objectives are of the second order. Because of the first order, the most important ones are business objectives. And tech objectives are the derivatives of whatever business needs. So for example, security. If I build a banking application, then probably my standards of security should be extremely high, right? But if I build something totally different, let's say a game engine, then I should be more focused on the performance, so I need to make sure that it's very performant, it doesn't consume a lot of CPU when it's not needed, and so on. But the security part doesn't seem that much important in that case. And these are, of course, just arbitrary objectives. There is much more on both sides, but you see the point. Also, let's take like risk management. It also very depends on the scale of the company and scale of operations that that the company tries to attack. So, like risk management, if you're a seed level startup, then you need to validate many ideas. You need to find your product market fit. So you usually don't need to build very scalable solutions. Right. All these metrics would be possible we could maximize all of them, if not of this one teeny tiny aspect of our reality, which is that all the resources in our world are limited. There's a limited amount of time, limited amount of money, of energy, of our intellectual horsepower, and if we don't deeply internalize this finitude of what we are doing and what we are capable of, then we're just going to we're just going to blindly maximize one of the metrics, then we're most likely than not to fail on providing some healthy baselines for the rest of them. Right. Another aspect is personal and psychological factors. There's a lot of them. It's an ocean of knowledge, and we're not going to discuss it here. But personal aspects also can drive us to over-engineer, and by personal I don't mean only you, but also each of your team members. So I'm just gonna enumerate few examples, but hope you get the idea. So all kinds of insecurities can project to over-engineering. One common example is that when a developer just enters either an industry or a new company, then they want to show, the developer wants to show that it's capable of the complexity of it all, that it's skillful. So sometimes it's end up in a situation that developer tries to somehow show off their skills, and they're just doing it. Their first pull requests are very detailed, very everything's pixel perfect. But because of this, sometimes they're just going over the line of what is actually rational. Unconstrained curiosity. Curiosity and willingness to learn is a very noble thing. It's the best thing that can happen to a developer. But there is a time and place for testing new technologies and approaches and all of that. And usually this place is not your code meant to go to production. But sometimes we use this platform to just to craft our skills because we have our internal agenda of becoming a better developer, and this can be harmful to business that you're trying to work for. Cognitive biases and logical fallacies, so like everything regarding why we fail to reason properly. Competitive mindset, this can be helpful, but also it can be toxic. It's helpful when you use your competitive mindset to, for example, compete with the other competitors of your business and try to understand how they operate, and then use some of their patterns to help your own business grow. But it can be toxic as well. So, like for example, if you have a team and there's some political power games, this may lead to over-engineering just to show the other person your own superiority. It happens. And pure communication skills. I guess we understand what this means. It's either I'm not fully understanding what other people's try to convey, and because of this mismatch of this gap, we're failing to find the sweet spot that we talked about, or the other way around is that we're trying to say what's on our minds, but we're not articulate enough, and it also fails short. Knowledge gaps. Knowledge gaps, one of them being available technology. So you need to know your stack. If you don't know your stack, then you don't know its limitations on the one side, and on the other side, the opportunities. And it can hit you both ways. If you don't know the limitations of your technology, then you can start building. At some point, you will have to just make workarounds just to make it work. And this may be counterproductive. Right. And then there is code. With a large enough code base, there is no chance that you fully understand and have constantly in your mind what's there. And having a good understanding of how it works and what are its limitations and its benefits can also lead us to over-engineering. Like, for example, let's say you're a front-end developer, you have a design that you want to convert to an actual page, and then and let's say it's a list and there are sorts and filters, so you build it from the scratch or with some basic technology that you agreed to use. But in the end, it turns out that there is this problem was solved multiple times, and it's generalized, and the code and the actual components that fetches the data, that sorts it and filters it, it's all there, and you just didn't know that you can use it out of the box. And then there's domain knowledge with a moderate amount, of course, because our main expertise is not being experts in the business domain, but if you don't have the basic understanding of how it operates, then it can also fail you, because very often tickets with actual requirements of what needs to be done already have some baked-in assumptions into it. And if you just don't know these assumptions, you can interpret it on your own and go totally different way. Ambiguity of the scope. Sorry. So this is probably the more tangible one, because this is what we usually do before we start working. and we all know this, that assumption is the mother of all disasters, and the more place you live for interpretation, the more likely it is that you're going to go either of the directions on the spectrum. Right, and there are business scope that this is not very much, so this is not our main domain of expertise, but very often we also can help business better understand the actual scope while providing them with our expertise. And what is more relatable is the technical scope. So just having all the business requirements fully spec'd doesn't mean that you can just go to your cave and work for 3 days on your project, because there are a lot of many smaller things that can make a big impact on how you're going to approach the solution. For example, if you let's say a business requirement is that we need to upload and store files, and you fail to ask what is the size limit of it, then you may assume it's 100 gigabytes of data per file, and your solution will be vastly different than if it's 50 kilobytes. Yeah, we can have perfect scope defined, and then we jump into the actual implementation. And every once in a while, it always happens that some things will occur just when you already developing this. And this is where communication with the team and even radical transparency is very, very helpful. Not questioning the status quo. And the first one is lack of status quo. So if we don't have some kind of unified ways of how we approach problems, and also some kind of coding guidelines, then again there's a lot of room for interpretation, and every developer being a little bit different and having different background and different incentives, we are not guaranteed to not over or under engineer. But this one's probably obvious. The other one, irrelevant imposed industry standards. So, as mentioned before, all the tech incentives are very much driven by business, and what should be your standard can vary very much based on this. An example is TypeScript. There was a good question today in one of the presentations. Why not use any? And and I would say that it's about TypeScript is a great tool. It's an industry standard already, but it has some cons as well. For example, if you're building a proof of concept, TypeScript is usually not an answer. Why? Because even though TypeScript in the long run helps you with smoother development, better developer experience, and it's faster to actually develop, but in the short run, it's not. It's you need to add a lot of boilerplate code. And why would I do it if I build a proof of concept that I know I will trash in weeks or months? So this is what we should question. Do we really need to use a standard just because it's an industry standard? Then there's set-in-stone project organization and standard processes. So once we, for example, have coding guidelines, and we use them, and it's good to use them because being consistent with how problems are being solved is very important. But if we're not questioning them every once in a while, then we may end up in a situation where the rule reached its expiry date, and it's no longer helping us to actually improve our whatever our metric or our objective is. And overtrusting your peers, regardless of the seniority level or the position in the company. Everybody makes mistakes, and if we're overtrusting people we work with, then this also may end up with 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Right. Okay. Let's go to symptoms. Wrong abstraction. So this is the probably the heaviest of the symptoms. It's because the wrong abstraction is the wrong abstraction is the heaviest probably of all the symptoms, because it's very hard to revert it. And when you apply a wrong abstraction, then you probably then you fail to adhere to the most important goal of a clean code, which is readability. Design patterns are tools and not goals. Yeah, and a few words about duplication of code, because not every duplication of code is duplication of business logic. For example, you have two pages that have similar layouts, so you abstract it away because it seems like it's the same. But then here comes your product owner or whoever and changes the layout of just one of the pages, and it turns out that your assumption was wrong, because these two parts of code looked the same, but they were serving a different purpose. Extremely safeguarded code. So 3 cases here: anticipating every scenario, excessive error handling, and 100% test coverage. So anticipating every scenario, we saw it in the first example. If it's why would I check if a number is finite if the only reason why while the context of me checking that number is even is in the shopping cart. It could be valuable if it was in some kind of math application, but it's very context dependent on what edge cases you should really prepare for. Excessive error handling. Good error handling is strategic and usually layered, so you don't have to go case by case every time and think what would happen if this service fails and what happens if this and this and that. And 100% test coverage, hopefully nobody is triggered, because it's good to write a code, but write tests. But why do we write tests? Because it's a proxy for stability of our application. But it doesn't show you the full picture, because you can have 100% test coverage and you can still have bugs because the code is actually not coded, for example. And also, you can test very trivial things, like you have, across all your code base, you have classes, and you check for every getter and setter if it returns or changes the value, and in 99% you're just doing the most simple thing. So it doesn't provide you with any more, 90% doesn't provide you with 100% much more of stability. And here's a heuristic for how to determine if a scenario is worth considering to code and prepare for. So on the left side, there is a probability times severity, which is the overall impact. The potential impact of your edge case is how often it can happen and how severe are the consequences. If one of this is small, then you can probably leave it away. But sometimes we look at, hey, this would be very severe, and we forget about the probability part, which is crucial as well. Premature optimization. So it's not the same as early optimization. As we talked before, for example, if you build an game engine, then you're going to start like performance optimizations from the very beginning. This will be your high priority. But premature optimization is optimizing when you don't have a clear evidence of benefiting from it. So you should very much consider every time the relevance of the metric you try to obsess about, and set benchmarks. And here is an example. So in our company, we very much care for user experience and also the technical part of user experience on our website. So we're monitoring the web tracking across all of our pages, and we set some targets, some baselines. So if you see it's all green. So now if I'm asking myself, do I really need to be extra cautious about my Web Vitals performance building the next thing? Probably not. Focusing on how before understanding why. This is very often related to people providing too many technical details or jumping. Like, let's say we have a conversation about the high-level conversation about we're going to build this new feature, and the person asks some very specific technical questions like, are we going to use this Axios or React query or fetch or whatever? But it's, all right, time's up. Sorry, I disappoint a little bit myself and maybe you, because it's like 1/3 of the, it's 1/3 of the presentation. No, 1/3 that I haven't finished, but, right, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Do I have a microphone? So the good news, though, is that hopefully you'll be here for a little while after, and we can network and people can get some more information from you, and or you can come back.
Right, and this is a teaser because this is the fun part, the solutions. So.
I'm really impressed by the way this was laid out, and I have to say that I've been involved in discussions with developers about their work for like the past 5 years. These topics today that you brought up, I had the very same conversations today, several times. Has anyone else had similar conversations? Actually today. And I don't do that. Artur? You're starting with me already. You're right in the front row. Okay, so the thing is this. I think this, and this is another thing to take to consider. For some people, development and coding is a business as well. So we also have business concerns, the same as our clients have business concerns. Is that correct? So when we say that business drives the technology and the tech, it can be complicated. That's what I wanted to say, because we also, as a business, need to respect our own business objectives and requirements. Is that true? All right. So I'm thinking this, and we had this conversation, and before I give a question, I'm thinking, okay, at the very beginning, if you have a competent technical officer who is at the first meetings when we're talking about what needs to be done, and the business requirements are being expressed, and there's a technical person saying, are you sure you need this, and why do you need it? And they're creating what they think the technical requirements are, and they're in line with the business objectives. This might be helpful. All right. Anyone have any questions?
Sure.
Okay, so my question is about the simplicity spectrum. Do you think it shifts with time, as in something which was considered, something which is currently considered over-engineering used to be normal back in the day? Like in a physical world, if it wasn't for over-engineering, cars in the 60s wouldn't be safe or reliable. And cars from the 60s run until now, and currently...
What's your question?
There was a question.
Yeah.
Trust me. And now cars break one day after the warranty ends. And in software world, in the 60s, let's say, people were programming closer to the CPU, etc. And now we have garbage collectors and libraries. And I would wager that there are people in this room who don't know what garbage collector does. Start with me. So, do you think the spectrum shifts with time?
Yes, definitely. I think it shifts constantly. Every time that you discover a new thing about your solution and how it really applies to the problem that you were trying to solve, because like most of the thing. We're never. It's very rarely a case where you just developed a thing and you think this is over-engineered. It's only in the retrospective that you realize that this was too bloated. This feature was unnecessary, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's a very fair point. But yeah, it's a dynamic. It moves and it dances all the time.
Retrospective, what a concept. How many of you engage regularly in retrospectives on the projects that you deliver? I want to see hands high. Let me see, proudly. Very, very important. I think, thank you, that was very nice. Any next question?
It can be also like a personal retrospective.
I mean, a team retrospective on the project is, I think, very potentially useful. I don't know, maybe it's not necessary. Next question, hold on, who has the microphone? Oh, there you are, okay, go ahead.
It does work. Okay, I'm not sure how to ask this right. When we're thinking about off-shelf solutions and tailor-made solutions, when we start a project or a feature, do you think this is a completely tangential problem to what you're talking about right here, about over-engineering, or do you think that tailor-made solutions are placed somewhere on the spectrum that you just showed, or the other ones are? It's a very open question, I know.
Yes, it is a very open question. Can you?
Okay, let me be more specific. How do you go about choosing when to decide to go for reinventing the wheel, and when you actually take something off the shelf that's ready made for you?
Okay, yeah, understand. Yeah, I think it's a very fair point, and because if we're trying to, I would say look for a good enough solution. So there's an algorithm of good enough. For example, if I want to buy a microwave, I can go and research the best microwave for the price, but not having very sophisticated requirements, I can just buy one off the shelf and be happy with it for the rest of my life, right? And I think the same applies to software. You need to compare it with your own requirements, and sometimes it's very hard to say where you should say this is enough of research that you've done, and this is why scope and properly scoping what you really need is absolutely crucial. It was one of the solutions to be very rigid about how you scope and also list all the pitfalls or the rabbit holes that you can dig into, but you shouldn't because it's not essential. So it's all about finding the essential things that match with your requirements.
Thank you. Piotr, I really like what you said about having no idea what garbage collectors do. You know, the fact is that a lot of businesses, mid-sized businesses, they don't have any idea. They don't have a clear understanding of what their business plan will be in a year. So while you're developing a solution for them, they're actually changing plans unexpectedly because things are shifting so quickly. So that is a really important point. There is a certain kind of like, it's difficult to manage understanding and to go along with the changes. And so how do you know you're over-engineering if in fact, yeah, I'm seeing a dilemma here. And I know for a fact that business objectives can change in the middle of your project, and then This is why we have agile methodology now instead of the thing we used to have, that static thing.
And that's why I also think that it's useful to frame it as a spectrum, because hitting the exact middle is an unattained ideal, and usually your solution will be offsetted to the one or the other side a bit, and that's just reality.
Next question.
Yeah, sorry. I really liked what you were saying, because I'm facing all those things every day. And I just want to confirm, if I understood correctly, your talk was more focused on while you're at work, right? That you should prioritize what the business needs, right? Because you can create the most complex system ever, but does the business actually need it right now? Is it mature enough, right?
Yes.
So this was strictly focused on how to be more delivering faster value to the company, right?
Yes, exactly. If it's important objective for company to iterate fast, because sometimes it's. I mean, obviously, if you give so sometimes it's not the case, right? Sometimes they value the quality more than the time of development, and then you should have a different approach. So it's pretty much I believe that the whole problem solving style that you have should be aligned with your business. So on working on the enterprise level application with 50 developers is a totally different experience than freelancing on your own, crafting websites to some strange guy from the other side of the world.
And someone suggested today, and I thought it was brilliant, thank you, to make agreements and contracts to deliver like vertical slices of, what do you need right now? Okay, let's give you what you need now, and then we can work on the rest later, and really prioritizing in that way, instead of trying to create the whole universe, at once. I think it sounds practical.
Exactly.
We have one more?
Yeah, one more.
Prioritizing was also one of the solutions. So we covered at least two of them, so that's great.
All right, so I'm curious about the actual solution, and it's pretty cool that we were literally over-analyzing over-analysis.
True.
Our analysis paralysis, we call it.
Fair point. Right, I had a question about your slides, just the one before this one. I think there was some KPIs that you were using,
not this one.
Or the green one that, there was a green one which you're something to do
This
with.
one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Web Vitals homepage. Can you care to explain what these are? And further question, homepage mobile, so your users are mostly mobile now?
No, it's
Or
yes, but
specific
it's
or not?
yes, but this board is specific to a mobile experience. So do you know what Web Vitals are? These are the set of metrics developed by Google that aim to compare the user experience quality from the technical point of view on the website. And these metrics here are some of them. So, for example, the first one, FCP is first contentful paint. So how much time does it take for a user to actually see first chunk of content? There is a TTI, which is time to interaction. So how much does it take for me to actually be able to click a button? Speed index, it's more of a general index. The LCP is largest contentful paint. So because there is a first contentful paint, which is which doesn't have to be meaningful. For example, it's you immediately see, but a content, but it's just a loader, so it's not meaningful. And largest contentful paint is the biggest part of the render that is visible at the above the fold for the user. And TBT is total blocking time, so how much interruptions are between your interactions. There are more of them, and I very much encourage to explore Web Vitals because yeah, it's very helpful. We actually focused on this. We had a whole assessment of Web Vitals. We set the baselines and we deliberately worked on improving them. And as a result, it improved first the extremely improved the conversion of the users on our website, and also improved the organic traffic, because Google also, when considering indexing a page, it also takes into consideration these metrics. So if you're good in them, then you're more likely to be higher in the indexing.
Przemek, thank you. We give Przemek a really big hand. That was excellent. Thank you very much. Gosh, I mean, that discussion could have gone on all night, because he's talking about some real situations and stuff that I think you all face, for sure. If I'm facing it, and I don't even code, I know you are. So these are really critical issues in web analytics, absolutely. So this is KMag. I don't know if you've seen most recent, what do we call this, edition. And what an artistic representation this is on front. They're one of our partners and sponsors. And in this particular issue, we have this, which is, I think it was a blog post, and it's also an article, and it's a lot of a very interesting read. And this is Iga Trydulska, standing here right in front of us. And she's going to do an extended lightning talk. I recommend that you get a copy of this or check it out online. I also read her blog post. Very interesting topic and extremely controversial right now. And if we don't mean to be concerned with this type of thing right now in your work, you will eventually, because it's coming. Iga, what is the title of your talk again?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. Hi, my name is Iga. I'm a media researcher and a journalist, and today I'll be talking about gender portrayal and how do the large neural networks.
How do the LLMs, we know what they are, influence the gender bias portrayed in the media? Folks, Iga Trydulska. Here we go.
Hi. Hi, thank you so much, Barry, for the introduction. And yes, it was mentioned, I'll be talking about how do the large language networks harvest already biased data, then perpetuate them within their own algorithms. And just a quick FYI, while I did study coding, I am a terrible coder. So if you ask me a very technical question, I'll break down crying, because that's not something I'm very good at. Just a quick question, where can I? Just like this? Okay, yeah. So an inspirational quote for the start, and I just wanted to quickly preface it by saying that I come from an intersectional school of feminism, which is a doctrine that acknowledges that while there are many solutions right now being offered to the gender-related problems, many of them only relate to white women from developed countries. And that's not necessarily the best case, because as you'll see, many of the examples that we'll give can as well be related to the people of color, LGBTQ plus people, and all of the other minorities. So I think this element of being interconnected is really crucial in here. Right. So I divided this topic into like two main areas. First one being the social, so how the societal change influences the data that we harvest, and then how the data is then challenged in the technical processes. And I'm going to start with the social. And I've done a very, very tiny axis with absolutely incomplete, with just a few of events that led to the eventual development of neural networks and LLMs. And as you can see, my main point here is that it's actually impossible to think about machines without developments from the 16th or even 17th century. And we can see that the fields of computation started well before the 20th century. And that was way, way, way before the first wave of feminism and before even the feminist thought began to exist. And while we are thinking about the first calculators, René Descartes was creating the most influential philosophical idea, which led to the but the still widespread belief that women are somehow less intellectually capable than men. And it took years before women could be professors at universities, and the first text that dealt with the representation of women in technology and the fact that because we are members of society which are treated differently, technology will also treat us differently. And that didn't start to emerge until the half of the 20th century. So I think it's quite important to take into consideration that for years we were thinking about computation. We didn't even think about any other perspectives rather than the perspective of white European men, as we have here. And yeah, so I'm sure you all know the Turing test very well, but I'm not sure if many people are aware that the first test that Turing created was involved distinguishing between a man and a woman. And why is that important to neural nets? Well, there is no such thing as a man and a woman objectively. There is it's not possible to define that. All of these definitions are dictated by our culture. And while we talk about things that are very much corporeal, it's not easy to translate them directly into something that's immaterial, such as technology. And that can be very, I think, easily seen in the example of Shirley cards. And Shirley cards were cards created by Kodak in, I think, in the 1940s, which were supposed to make it easier to adjust the exposition of the film cameras. And they did it on an example of their employee, Shirley, pictured here. And but Shirley was white. And up until the 1970s, it was impossible to capture a white person and a black person on with the same film exposition. That is actually the first picture that managed to do so. That's the first new film. So all the photographs that we have up until the late second half of the 20th century carry some kind of invisible bias that is hard to think about because we don't really have an option of seeing an alternative. And that all, I think, culminates in a phenomenon known as historical bias. Because I think if I asked you what's more prone to be biased, whether that would be a modern computer or a camera from 19th century, like a camera obscura, I think an obvious answer would be that would be a computer, because it's a product of an era in which we recognize the struggle of women, the struggle of people of color. But unfortunately, all of the mechanical agents that we use today, they inherit all of the bias and they still amplify it. They're not free of it. They have more politically correct descriptions and they do have some solutions, but they are built on the legacy of treating people inequally. So I think in the realm of LLMs or the large language networks, there are 3 levels of bias. Historical bias we already covered, dataset bias, algorithmic bias, and dataset bias. That's the visual representation of those biases. Historical bias occurs before the dataset harvesting, and then it occurs already in the network. All of these sources will be cited at the end. And yeah, so the most I think crucial point with dataset bias is that the majority of the voices that we have in the data sets, I will give specific examples in a second, that LLMs use come from young men from developed countries, which by itself it's not wrong that men from developed countries are being represented, but they shouldn't be the only ones which are being represented, because that can lead to a few severe consequences. And so does anybody know what is ChatGPT's trained data set composed of, as an example? Reddit. Very well. Very, very well. Yeah, OpenAI, it's not necessarily secret knowledge, but it's not necessarily public either. OpenAI, on their website, they just said it was composed of 30 billion words and 570 gigabytes of data. But thanks to some researchers, which I'll also cite at the end, they also say that it was composed of various internet sources and books. And thanks to a few researchers, we know that that was mostly Wikipedia articles and Reddit forums. And here are the demographics of said websites. We can see that Reddit actually surprised me. I thought it was going to be way less, but Wikipedia is even worse. And so we already have data from a very tiny percentage of population. But unfortunately, that misrepresentation is doubled, because as many sociological research, which I also cite at the end, shown young men from developed countries are the kind of people who have the highest chances of representing extremist conservative views. And that means that that not only they are the hegemony, that means their hegemonic views are being hegemonic once again. So it's like squared. So it's very hard to escape that, because that's what our data is composed of. And secondly, and this is the part I think is the most interesting, the way data sets are currently filtered disposes of voices of marginalized communities. There's, I'm sorry for vulgar words, but that's the list called a list of dirty, naughty, obscene, and otherwise bad words, which is sometimes called the silent censorship of AI. These are the words I just put the ones that start with A. That LLMs, this is AI's, this is OpenAI's list that they use. It's not their list, but that's the one they used. And these are the words that LLMs cannot use in any case. They just can't use it. And from one side, it's a great idea to filter all potentially racist and overly sexualized or offensive words. But at the same time, the problem is that words change. Their definitions, their connotations change over time. And in many cases, certain words were extremely offensive. For example, the word queer used to be an extreme offense, such as the word wink, or a word gay actually used to be an offense too. So if you filter out all the pages that have these words, you filter out a lot of experiences of marginalized communities which reclaim those words and they use it. So we lose a lot of experiences. We lose a lot of experiences of people who we just filter out for a reason. And there is an easy solution to this, because it's not possible to filter those by hand. But that's not necessarily a good solution either. And finally, dataset bias mostly appears due to the regeneration of the old phenomenon, which I'm sure you know very well. It's an interesting value of neural networks, which means that they cannot really create something entirely new. It's very much visible in areas such as computer vision and, for example, in automatic cars. So when a car trained in California sees a moose in Norwegian wood, it doesn't know what it is because it never saw it before, and it's impossible of comprehending it. So all of this, the bias that we saw, it's looped. It cannot escape. So what could be the solutions? The first one that many researchers proposed would be to increase dataset size, and while it's the most, I think, right now widely used solution, it also leads to the computational depth, where we don't really know what our dataset contains. And if AI makes any mistake, we cannot check it because the dataset is too large, which then leads to the black box problem, which is already very prominent. The second idea was to increase the computational power, and it also works, but on a very small scale. Otherwise, it leads to the phenomenon of apophenia, when the large networks hallucinate things. And it's okay when it comes to, funny dog memes or like fine ChatGPT answers, but at the same time, well, I don't know. We have instances of Google OpenAI telling people to jump off a bridge and being quite racist. So it's not necessarily a good choice either. Sorry, that was crazy. That was crazy. Yeah, so I really recommend checking some of the opinions that Google AI suggested, because it suggested to eat cockroaches. It suggested to add glue to your pizza sauce. It was really quite interesting. And my proposed solution is literacy, understood not only as being able to read, but also as engaging with media. Teaching logical fallacies, teaching about unreliable narrators, teaching about checking sources, and teaching people how to engage with spoken word and creative elements in a way that can prepare them to face that. Thank you.
Really well done. Of course, an excellent topic. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? An excellent topic. Please don't go anywhere. I think we have a dilemma that if we want to train well a large language model, it doesn't sound like a good idea to omit data, like all the Wikipedia and all the Reddit. We have to have that too, so it's not getting rid of or filtering that data. I think our issue is about the elimination of, there's not enough, for instance, data or let's say minority authors, or they're not being promoted enough. There's not enough public information about various cultural experiences which do exist and have existed on the planet. It's just not published, it's not popular, people don't know about it, and burning books, for instance. In education in the United States right now, we have literally the Department of Education eliminating books from the from the educational program, and therefore the children do not have exposure, and therefore it's not going to be included in the data sets either. So yes, try to be expansive, try to look for the most unique information and the most difficult to find information. And I just appreciate the topic so much because I could go on forever. Who has a question? No question on this topic? I have a question. Do any of you see that what she's saying is absolutely true? Let me see your hands. Is anyone unsure? Okay, so that was clear. That was clear. So we know that this is valid, and we also know, because today I also had a conversation about these data sets, the training data and the verification data, and all the things that go into training a model. And yes, there's a question right there. Do you have a microphone? Hold on one second.
Here.
We have an audience in the online.
If you come back to the slide with the 3 types of biases,
Yep.
that very technical one. My question there was...
This one?
Yeah, it suggests that each of the biases is like valid on its own. My question is whether the algorithmic bias is actually, if there was no dataset bias or historical bias, like if all the data was legitimate to the fullest, would the algorithmic bias still apply?
Unfortunately, I don't think there is a way of creating completely legitimate data, because data that we have now, it's not legitimate.
How about if we reduce the scope of the LLM and, for example, it's only mathematics? Mathematics is objective, rather, right?
To be fair, I'm not a mathematics expert, unfortunately. But to be fair, I think mathematics is a very, very, very unique example. But I'm sure that there are some theories that are being seen as not completely, for example, checked, or which are still being developed. And I think that if the problem of the origination of the old didn't exist, if AI was truly capable of creating new thoughts, then we would have the theory of everything right now, and we would have like all the math theories explained. So I do think it's actually still applicable. The type of bias, the type of bias I was talking about here is completely social, and while I think math also has some social elements. I'm pretty sure, like that's everything does. What is funded, what is not funded, and stuff like that. And we cannot get rid of the human factor in anything that we do. So I think that that this is a very, very unique example. But I do think that there would be some bias still, because the neural nets, I think, are prone to giving you the same solutions. So that could be seen as bias as well.
Yes, well, history we know is reported by the victors. Is that correct? So anyone who didn't win, that information is just not available. And now that we have the chance to record everything, we have cameras everywhere, and we have the ability to really collect data. I think that's one of our main responsibilities. Any other question? Yes, right there, one more.
There is a paradox. I don't recall how it's named, but it goes like this. If you're extremely liberal, radically liberal, you allow all the ideas in the conversation, then you also include ideas that are hateful and harmful to the idea of the liberty itself. So where do you draw a line, having that in consideration?
Where do I personally draw a line, or in regards to this question?
Yes, you have a power of determining which data should be filtered out.
Censorship, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, we do have censorship right now, so that's
yes,
not like.
But clearly it's not a good baseline. So where is it?
Well, for me personally, I think a good baseline is drawing a line where a certain idea is extremely harmful and dangerous, to a public, or it calls to hate or calls to death. But I think it's very hard to draw the line, and it's a question of who is drawing the line, because so I think this is I think it was I was at a like a Google DeepMind conference once, and they were talking about how they trained their LLM, which is shit, but like how, but still was very interesting. And they said that basically they had a lot of problems with fine tuning, with questions such as what should immigrants be allowed into Europe, and because it is valid to have a different opinion, then yes, they should, but and it's not really ethical to not let people talk about some things. But I do think that, for example, the fact that in Poland you cannot really publicly support Nazism or Adolf Hitler, I do think that's a good thing. And we already have censorship. I don't think it's possible to get rid of censorship, because no statements are objective in the social, like from the social perspective. So I do think that there should be a line drawn when we talk about viewpoints that are genocidal in nature, for example. That's my opinion.
I think everyone's entitled to their point of view. Whether or not everyone is entitled to express their point of view at the expense of someone else is another question. I think that I like your answer. One more thing, the specific, medically specific, let's say, instead LLMs. So I think this whole idea of AGI can go out the window, because we can never have a general intelligence will have the theory of everything, because there will always be bias there. There will always be censorship. There will always be something missing, because our existence as human beings means there is always something that's going to be missing. So I do think the human element, as I've been saying all this time, is essential, and we use these tools in an intelligent way now that we have while we still have the chance. Before the monster, the mechanism becomes so big that it's very difficult to make a dent and to have an impact. We happen to be at a point right now where we really can influence which direction this goes.
Yes. Just like a quick, before that came to me, sorry. I think your question is so valid on theoretical level. I've been wondering about that like ever since I remember. But I do think that in practice, it's rarely that these kind of extremely controversial views are being super restricted, because when something is restricted, there are a lot of people who are like, oh no, I actually think that Hitler was a good guy. Oh no, I actually really support communism. And I think that it's a paradox that those people very often talk about the rights being taken away, while they do take rights of minorities as well. So while in a perfect world, I think that the line should be drawn at very like far end of the spectrum, I think that it's not discussion for now, because right now I think a lot of viewpoints are still not being expressed, viewpoints that are not hateful or detrimental to society. They're still not being expressed because of the societal like contempt, especially in Poland, and
especially in Poland.
Especially in Poland, and yeah, like, but not only in Poland. I've been in London for 4 years, and it's not that good. It's not that great there as well. So I think we maybe should focus first on enhancing the good elements before we start to like
you can't unread, you can't unknow, you can't unthink, you can't eliminate words from the dictionary. So if I stand here right now and use the N-word, am I allowed to do that? Is that offensive to anyone?
You can. You have to have an N-word pass.
I have an N-word pass. So does your son. I know that. The thing is this. It's very important to really remember that we are the ones that give value to whether or not these words have value. So the weight of what you're saying. What about comedians? Now, if we can't have satirical comedy and we can't talk about really ugly things in a very unpleasant way, why should we be restricted from doing that? The idea of censorship, I'm against. Let them say what they're going to say. Let them do what they're going to do. If we improve conditions in society, maybe there'll be less aggression and less anger and less hatred. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. Why take anything away? Thank you. We're going to just run out of time. Can we talk with you later after? Because we're just going to keep going. I thought this should have been a panel discussion. I really did.
We should do that.
This is a really great topic, and we really appreciate you so much. Please give everyone give a big hand to Iga. Are you out of your trance now? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we have one more lightning talk coming, and before that happens, I want to go back and to one of our earlier slides. Do we have slides available? Thank you, because I think I skipped a couple of things in our introduction, and I just wanted to remind everyone that yes, WarsawJS has been around for quite a while, and we're hoping that you really feel the benefit of what you're learning and experiencing here. And more importantly, that we start to feel like we really are a community and we start to operate as a community. It's not about individual competition between companies and between labels and between technologies and between applications. And so it's about how we can bring those things together to create something. And the sooner people learn that, wow, as a region, even I'm not a nationalist, however, I think Polish developers underestimate themselves, should be at the very front of everything right now, instead of waiting to see what happens and then trying to catch up. I think it's absolutely a result of not really recognizing that if we work together, we can have more. So that's just my point of view. Thank you so much. Can you get to the blog post and the et cetera next? Oh, the survey. Are we going to do this now? Do we have time? Yeah. Okay. So we'd like for you to take note of this and please take 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes to fill out this survey so that you can let us know how to provide adequate and hopefully better than adequate experiences for you in the future. Let us know what you think. We really appreciate it so much. Okay, so can I just see the next slide? Oh, wait, we'll wait. Okay, let's hang on. Slow your roll, slow your roll. So yeah, I thought about it. So what about it if I stood here right now? I've just made this whole beautiful speech about we're all open and acceptance and kind behavior and not being hostile to each other. And if I just blurted out the N-word, okay. No, wait, great story. So I'm in a very small town in Poland in the middle of this huge exclusive wedding. And it was an international wedding. So half the people were Polish and half the people were from America. And I'm in the band, so I'm singing for the audience, etc. So I go to the dressing room to change. And as I'm coming back, this is a huge open palace in a big field. I'm walking out of the dressing room, getting ready to go back on the stage, and some young man from America, this is what happens. He didn't see me. He didn't see me, and all of a sudden, okay, forgive me online, I hear, nigga! So I think what happened was that he had been in America so long, being constrained from being able to use that word, he figured, I'm free, I'm here. And so he starts to scream, and as he's screaming, I come up behind him and tap him on the shoulder. And he goes, like this. The poor guy, he felt so bad. And I felt bad. Because, he felt, if you had seen this, he was apologizing to me for the rest of the wedding. He couldn't even enjoy the wedding because he was like, no, really, let me explain, I'm so sorry. It's a word. It's a word. We give value to this language. So if he felt like he needed to scream, good for him. It didn't affect my performance, and I felt bad that he felt bad, and words are just words. Without any further delay, folks, hopefully you filled out the survey. Please welcome, oh God, what's this guy's name? Krzysztof Moszyński. Welcome. 5 minutes. Piotrek. Piotr. We need you to switch.
1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm on.
You got just the microphone. That's it.
No, I do need the presentation.
You have your slides in there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I got lots of stories, plenty of them, really. Related to technology, thank you guys for just having me here, allowing me to just blah blah in front of you, because yeah, we have a lot in common and there's a lot of work to be done, and I think it's going to be done here, basically, in this part of the world.
Okay. Thanks you for having me here. And today my presentation will be not about a technical topic, but about a very practical topic. My name is Krzysztof Moszyński. My international name is Christopher Mile, and I'm a software developer and a coach. And my presentation is about the sphere of influence and proactive mindset, and how this can become your personal power. So, okay. Does it work? Okay. Yes? No? Okay, maybe it doesn't work. The sphere of influence is the idea that some things we can affect easier than others. It's a very basic idea and a very useful idea as well. Ancient Stoics had a very dualist view of this sphere of influence. They thought that some things are completely in our control, our thoughts, our emotions, our behavior, how we shape our character, and these we should focus on, these we should work to change. And others, like everything else, basically people's opinions, reputation, the results of our actions, we should just accept as they come, accept as they are. However, modern Stoics have developed a more sophisticated, more complex view of concentric rings. There are various degrees of influence. Some things we can influence easier, using less power to achieve more, and some are more difficult. Some are virtually impossible to affect. Like, who can change the past, okay? So then the question becomes, where do we direct our attention and energy in life? Or where do we direct more, and where do we direct less? And this is like the typical, like many people live like this, okay? They direct a lot of energy, like watching the news about things that they have zero power over, like getting invested into many issues in the world, issues in the culture, issues very difficult to change, very difficult to influence, and they forget about the issues that are close to them, their family, their lives, the environment. Now, this is a perhaps more healthy, more recommended distribution of attention, investing more into areas where our power is higher. Of course, we can still sometimes think about human nature, or still sometimes think about the past and maybe get some lessons from it, but maybe let's focus on what we can change, what we can affect. And in any situation, we also have a choice to focus on aspects of it that are outside of our control or things within our power. Yeah? So every situation has certain aspects of it that are more within our sphere of influence, and others, okay, someone wrote bad code, someone wrote complex code. What can I do with it right now? And let's get a different take from Lao Tzu, from Taoism. He is more about letting reality be reality, letting things flow as they flow, letting things be, not fighting the reality. And it's because the reality is not only always stronger, but also usually right. Things often are the way they are for good reasons, especially if they were organically developed, like our civilization. And why is this important? Because investing too much attention and energy into what we can't affect slowly transforms us into passive, self-victimizing crybabies. And, okay, why I put a baby here? Like, babies are naturally passive and helpless, and that's okay. That's the way they are, okay? And many people never mentally grow out of that stage, which is not okay. I've had my personal difficulties getting there, getting from here to here, and I have stagnated for years until I've learned to truly go for things I want in life and focus only on what I can affect. Changing minds takes time and effort. Of course, yes, I agree. Still, it's probably better to be here, like, it's probably more preferable for most of us. And of course, it's also a matter of degree, because everyone sometimes needs a hug. Everyone sometimes needs to complain a bit about the difficult reality that they can't affect. Sometimes think about it, yes. So the question is, are we crying babies just some of the time or all the time? And now, I do some coaching, and here are some questions I often ask my clients. So these are very useful questions. What do I like about the situation? Because it's very important to already appreciate what is good about the situation. Appreciation and gratitude for the good instead of forgetting about all the good and focusing on the bad. Let's think about what is good. What do I like about this situation? What do I dislike about the situation? How can I change the situation for more preferable state? What lies within my power? What lies the closest to my power? How can I grow and change my thinking to better face the reality around me? This is related to the Taoist view, the Taoist principle. Instead of trying to change the nature, trying to change the entire world, change yourself to better adapt to the world. And I will give you an example from my own life. Several months ago, I have discovered that I actually have Asperger's. So for a long time, I've been surrounded by people with Asperger's, so I thought that I'm normal, but apparently I'm not. And this really enabled me to understand myself better. And now I can think, what do I like about the situation? Yeah, I can greatly focus on things, on a particular thing. What do I not like about the situation? When I greatly focus on one thing, I lose focus from everything else. And this is difficult, particularly in social situations, and this makes me a bit sensitive to, for example, sensory stimuli. How can I change the situation for more preferable state? Okay, so I could try to change everyone's mind to be more accepting towards the way autistic people are, whatever. I could do that. Or I could just learn to adapt myself to the people as they are. Learn to exist in the world that I have. Here are some nice earplugs. When it's loud around me, instead of complaining, instead of trying to make everything adapt to me, I just wear my earplugs. That's okay. How can I grow and change my thinking to better face the reality around me? Well, I could think about myself. Oh, I'm a victim. I had this difficult thing in my life. I have this difficult thing in my life. I have no hair. Okay, I have, they are just very short. So, or I could adapt my thinking so that I can face the problems and find the solutions and change my life and everything around me for the better. So this is what I like. Thank you for listening. This is my Facebook, LinkedIn, and my coaching link or meeting link. You can set up any meeting with me, online or offline.
Thank you, Krzysztof. So many comments I could make. I'm not going to. Does anyone have a comment or a question, especially question? Let's go to Lena first. Yes, there is. I was looking for Dvudbek. What happened? Sorry. There you are.
Thanks. Okay, so from the perspective of a former therapist and psychologist, I wanted to ask you, how do you ensure that people that you have on coaching sessions accept the fact that not every person is able so easily, for example, to move from one mindset to another? Because my therapeutic perspective is that many people don't have opportunities, don't have space to move from this crying child to person who is able to set rules for themselves. So how do you make it so people are more inclusive and like don't force their great new mindset to others?
Okay, this is not needed to me. So don't force their great new mindset on others.
Yeah, because if you, in general, if you have the, okay, if you go through the change of your mindset and you have some good experiences with that, you have successes, it's really easy to think that others, if they just do the same as you did, will have the same results, will be in the same grade point, which is not true because others may not have the same opportunities, considering money.
Oh, I think I understand the question now. So when I'm coaching someone, I try to solve their problems, not theoretical problems of other people around them that could arise. And if, of course, they face this issue in, for example, one of their relationships, that they have problem interacting, communicating with a loved one, for example, because they are trying to kind of force their mindset on them, then we could talk about this as it becomes their problem, okay? So usually, I don't think I've ever actually faced this, but yeah, it is possible, and it is a relevant phenomenon. Yes.
It's true. Every person has a different brain chemistry. Some people are able to change mind and frequency more, and some people simply don't have the neural capacity. Simply physically don't have it. That is also true. My friend Pio Chintara said to me something similar. Two things, really quickly. A couple of weeks ago, he said, well, you can really be upset about what's happening now, or you could be really happy about all the terrible things that didn't happen. And I thought, wait a second. Wait, let me get that. Let me try that, because I'm in Poland, so we love to complain, right? I'm thinking, okay, wait, I can complain about this, or think about all the terrible things that didn't happen, right? And he had something. Also, a few years ago, before the next question, I went to something, 30 years ago. It was called Erhard Seminar Training, and it has to do with what you said. Oh. Do you know about it? It has to do with, the first thing I heard when I walked in the room is that they said, can you accept your life exactly as it is right now? Everything about it. Can you accept it or not? It's just a very basic question. And those who were like, well, let me think about it. Can I? You don't have a choice. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And the lack of acceptance of what actually is what you said, is really a stem of many, many problems. It is what it is. And do I have a choice about accepting that? Yeah. That it actually is what it is? Okay. Next question.
You have a choice about not accepting it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To change what is.
So how do you negotiate the value? Because if you want to be successful and other people want to be successful and that's a real value for them, then you just accept it and you follow that. However, this is always a question of what's first. If what means to be successful, in what way, where, if you show the slide with the focus.
Is this a question, sir?
Yes. My question is about
this one?
Yes. So you put in the center the things that we seem to have most control about, right? Or is it,
yes.
an importance?
Of course, you can talk about this. You can argue if this is a proper distribution. It's approximate.
We could also argue about whether we actually affect the past now or not. Because listen, they're not joking in quantum physics. Okay, so maybe we are able to change the past.
Please continue.
Yes. So my question is, how does this intersect with our hierarchy of values? And everyone has a different one, right? So in this case, this percentage of control might be into different vectors. So it might be a 3D diagram, actually.
How do we agree on value?
Yeah. How do we agree on hierarchy of values?
Agree with other people or with yourself?
With ourselves in this case. If
with
you're a therapist,
yes.
you don't try to impose your values. You're rather listening to the values of
this is about yourself, of course, like everything else here. So I think this is a very relevant question. And also I will add that this can differ for different people, because if you are a Mr. President, You might have greater say about the government policy than your own family. That's possible. That's possible. And of course, some people will prefer to focus on the things they have little control about, and maybe actually they develop themselves, they put themselves into a place where they have much more control over those things. Still, I think that's approximately, like, for most of us, like, ignoring this, like, as a general rule of happiness, flourishing, I would say that ignoring this completely, like, it doesn't work, really. Like, it doesn't work for, ignoring this doesn't work for anyone. Ignoring this doesn't work for 99% of people. Ignoring this, well, maybe it's, ignoring this, well, you can safely ignore this maybe. And this, yeah, probably ignore. So it is not a rule set in stone. Of course, different people value different things. It's just that when you focus your attention on some things and neglect this, it's very difficult to flourish as a human being and be, like, effective even in achieving any goal.
I think there's a huge difference between neglect and ignorance, don't you? So I don't think it's a good idea to ignore anything.
One more thing, because also the word being effective, also the question is when you're effective, because effective is the source, the mean, and not the goal, right? So this is also the question about the goal, right? So
yes, of course.
this is negotiable, right?
Of course. At the same time, like, there are some means, some goals that also become very efficient means to other goals. Like,
are we speaking of personal goals?
Maybe. I think, like, there are certain goals that if I achieve them, I can be much better prepared to universally face the universe in any other goals in the future. So I think these tend to be more universal as well.
That answer your question? Yes. That's interesting.
Other question. No?
I find that some people seem to be very ambitious and very goal-oriented, like achievement. So when I do the introduction for a person that says, so who are you, et cetera, I'm going to ask you a question. And they say, well, I want to get this, and how do I get this? And I want to do things that'll help me achieve this, and I want to do things that'll help me grow to be able to do. And they're constantly really ambitious. Yeah, they're very frustrated in being accepting and paying attention, being present. So it sounds to me like what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is to really pay attention and be present and more involved in your area of sphere of influence?
Influence, power, you can call it whatever you want. The place, the area, the range of things where you apply your effort and attention, and it brings relevant change, the most powerful change for you. Yeah, in achieving those goals. Yeah.
Got it. More questions? Anybody? Shishak, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I have the pleasure of speaking with this person for 1 hour every single week, and it's always challenging. We get into very intense topics. Are we talking about next week already?
We discovered that there is a bug here, and some of you opened the survey from last month. However, for me it works. For whom it works? Because I just wanted to check because it works for you. Okay, so I don't know how it happened.
It shows all the people presenting.
Oh, that's great. And or in the future.
Whoopsie. It's a security issue. Okay.
Can you tell us about the
So next month. So maybe you. I don't know. Okay. So next month we're inviting you for the next meetup. It's 117th on 40th of August, and we will have 14th. Yeah. 14th. we already know the agenda, so you can actually subscribe even today with a discount, with a early bird ticket, so that our organization can flourish and be prepared for the volume of members coming for the meetup. And what I wanted to say that we started a new way of having a ticket, because we realized that you need to buy every month a ticket, and it has a funny value, so it's not really efficient to take an invoice for that. So we thought about a year ticket. So for every for every meetup during a year, you can have one, and you will get one invoice, and you will be less distracted, and you will be always just on the list. So we discovered an invisible yearly ticket. So so if you want to be if you want to join our meetups frequently, it might be a good benefit for you. So that's what Barry mentioned earlier during today's event. So yeah, this is also something that will strengthen our community and make us better organizers. With yes, always. All right, so let's have a picture together. What do you think? Let's yeah, thanks. Okay, so.
Please, now let's just once again give a big hand to the sponsors. Come on. Who make it possible? Yes. And that is CallStack, Campus AI, KMag, XFang, Monday.com, and Paramount. We thank you very much. Yeah, you guys in the back, you're amazing. Thank you. We appreciate it. They keep the lights on, folks, and they make it possible for us to get together like this and brainstorm. I just want to say one more thing before we take this picture. Folks, I have a diametrically opposed view to many people, even in my own family. And my idea is this, that if I can do anything, achieve anything in this world that actually positively affects the next person, that's what I'm interested in doing. Because this is the recipe for sustainability. If I'm looking to get for myself, this is what we call the consumerism that we are consumed by, that we are living in. And I don't think that with the talent and the ingenuity that we have, that we want to design more ways to do that. I'm thinking if you dedicate your work to educating the children, teaching people to code, spreading information, making information more available to people who have less access, and making things more convenient, and just making it possible for them to have more, we will all have more. That's what I'm thinking. I really hope we can manage to do that instead of weaponizing the next technology, okay? Because every technology we've ever developed has been weaponized. Maybe this time we have a chance. Can we invite you guys to come just for one shot? Can we do a group shot together? Thank you so much. And thank you guys online. I don't know if we're off already. Thank you so much, Paramount.